That's maximum power up there. As it goes through the first amplifier, once you've got through the amplifier, it starts generating skirts on either side of it. That represents either distortion or nonlinearity characteristics of some sort. But you see, once it goes through, the first one is 2 milliwatt signal. Looks pretty good. When you output from 2.5 watt high linearity amplifier, you get some steps in there. That's still a good signal because they want to maintain a halfway decent signal noise ratio.
Use your mic, Art. Mike, use your mic.
Well,
They're recording this.
We got a portable mic over there.
Okay, is there a portable mic over there too? Okay.
Yeah, they're recording this for playback's sake.
Is this on?
Push the button there on the bottom.
On the bottom.
No,
How about?
the light has to come on.
Light's on.
Hello.
There you
Oh,
go.
Okay. Out of the amplifier, that's, you get some spectral regrowth, and that, at this particular point, that's okay. It's a significant difference between peak power and the first regrowth. That's not too bad. We add a brick amplifier. In this case, it's an 18 watt LD mouse brick amplifier. You see what the regrowth, this first step is much higher. Now you're getting much less, the signal noise ratio has decreased quite a bit. This is still an acceptable picture from a ham standpoint, but you see what happens is the signal passes through the amplifiers and the signal actually degrades. You get to the point where this is between 10 and 15 dB distance from there, and all of a sudden the receiver loses lock. You don't have anything more. But that's just an illustration from origination through about an 18 watt brick amp. That's what it what the difference is. Okay. DVBS advantages. DVBS is more nonlinearity tolerant than DVB-T. We'll talk about DVB-T shortly. Ready access to inexpensive satellite set-top boxes. You can buy a set-top box from that are designed for satellite. There are not too many now because a lot of DVBS is built into TV sets, but if you get a set-top box, you can find them out here in the flea market anywhere from $5 to $25 a piece. And that DVBS is fast lockup time. DVBS disadvantages: the receivers are not available for 70 centimeter operation. That there are no commercial receivers for DVBS on the 400 megahertz band until now. I'll give you a little bit of example more later. And as I said, it's mainly used only on 23 centimeters. Again, the technology is difficult to understand. That goes saying with digital formats that we're just gonna have to put up with it. I can't think of anything else except that not enough people use it. In the United States, most of the operation of DVBS is on 1200 megahertz, and on 70 centimeters it's all DVB-T at this particular time. Mainly because of the non-availability of good receivers on 70 centimeters for DVBS. Okay, now DVB-T general characteristics. It is COFDM modulation, and that is co-orthogonal frequency, Mike help me. Domain modulation. For what, I can never remember what that acronym is.
Division multiplexing.
Division multiplexing, that's right. The data stream, that data stream on the DVB-T is split up into a large number of low bandwidth data streams. It's the format they use. Instead of one high-speed data stream is in the DVBS. DVB-T puts a whole bunch of low resolution a large number of low bandwidth data streams together. Each stream it digitally modulates a set of closely spaced subcarrier frequencies. There's two modes available, basically the 2K and the 8K mode. They've each got 1,700 subcarriers in the 2K mode and 6,000 subcarriers in the 8K mode. Most of the times we use just the 2K mode. And in USA, it uses the QPSK modulation. That's a simple format, and it's a little bit easier to work with than some of the other stuff. If you wanted to do high definition, you want to go to a different format to accommodate that. Although QPSK handles high definition also. Terrestrial broadcast standard, again, it's terrestrial broadcast standard for European countries. That DVB-T is used in all commercial broadcasts in Europe. Almost all of European countries that I know of. Digital data is delivered in a series of discrete blocks at a symbol rate with a guard interval. Okay, I hope nobody wants me to explain that.
You can ask me.
Okay, we'll ask Mike later on. Okay. We're just going over the highlights here. We get into a detailed discussion in that one, we can take up the rest of the day. DVB-T disadvantages. The commercial receiver set-top box is not used commercially in the USA, so you have to go out and find something. Signal is higher peak value than DVB-SM, which means the signal stays at a peak value for a longer period of time. It presents certain challenges. It cannot be driven as close to compression as DVB-S, and that is, as you start to raise the signal, the output goes up in a linear fashion to the input signal that you have. Once you get to a close to a saturation point, now you start getting compression of the peak carrier. It's at that point that the DVB-T is not very tolerant. It quits early in that situation. Modulation is more complex than DVB-S. We'll just leave it at that. Okay, is DVB-S now, with all that information, you got it all memorized, right? Let's compare it. Is DVB-S the best for DATV? Well, I don't know. It's used, free-to-air receivers are available for 23 centimeters. If you want to operate on 23 centimeters, DVB-S is probably a pretty good choice. Receivers are cheap, $10 to $50 on eBay, $125 new at satellite store if you want to buy a brand new one. High linearity amps are not necessarily required. The format is generally tolerant of an amplifier that has some minor linearity problems. LDMOS RF power bricks are available, and that they work okay for DVB-S for the most part. Multipath cancellation schemes, they adequate for ham use. Not subject to motion limits. Okay, for mobile DATV, if you want to go down the highway at 65 miles an hour, it works pretty good. You'll notice that the ATSC format for digital television in the United States quits when you get to anything above walking speed. It is intended to not handle echoes and cancellation very well. Bandwidth is modifiable. In other words, it's not a fixed format bandwidth. If you have a situation where a couple of people want to operate close to one another, you can narrow the bandwidth of each one, operate independently, and you put the signal close to each other and still operate significantly. It's easy to have multiple video channels in a single carrier. Generally, I don't think anybody's going to do that, but you can buy equipment that puts multiple video channels on your one carrier. I do have one situation at our repeater at ATCO in Columbus where we put 2 video channels on the 1200 megahertz carrier, and we can see two separate RF inputs. So you can multiplex it and have more than 2, but we do 2. I don't know of anyone else that is putting multiple video signals on one carrier, but it can be done. Okay, DVB-T, is it the best? Well, it's very good for narrow bandwidth EX operation, as I've mentioned before. On 70 centimeters, most of the time it's used on 70 centimeters. Some receivers will work down to 100 kilohertz of bandwidth. You can operate in close proximity to other DVB-T signals. We talked about that before. A Taiwan manufacturer called HiDes makes dongles and also equipment for ham use in the DVB. They make DVB-T and they make some DVB-S equipment now. So right now, the only commercial carrier of significance is HiDes in Taiwan. They have some problems with their equipment. That's the bad news. The good news is they're very responsive to issues. We've noticed a number of problems with the software, and they get right to it, and within a day they issue us new firmware for the equipment and fix it. So that's a good deal. The Calvin works with us very, very acceptably. And that DVB-T is also the best for multipath interference. Now, in flat, level terrain that are out in the country, where no major buildings are involved, multipath probably doesn't make any difference. But if you get into mountainous areas like Mike has got out in California, yes, it becomes a significant issue, and the DVB-T does help quite a bit. High gain antennas also help to narrow it so that you don't have multipath issues. Okay, confused? I assume everybody is. Consider this. You can transmit approximately 3 dB more power, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more with DVB-S than DVB-T, because DVB-T has got kind of a flat top carrier on it, and you can drive it a little bit closer to compression. So you can get a little bit more average power of DVB-S than T. DVB-T uses higher linearity amps because of multiple carriers. So the complexity of the transmit equipment is a little bit more complex for DVB-T. DVB-S has a shorter receiver lockup time, and I mentioned that before, that you can lock onto a signal a little bit quicker on DVB-S than you can on DVB-T. How much difference? We're talking seconds, 1 or 2 seconds maybe. DVB-S has one high resolution carrier, low bandwidth. We covered that before. DVB-T is better for multipath cancellation, but not needed in most flat terrains, as I mentioned there also. DVB-S is better off frequency lockup range. You can be a little bit more further away from the main frequency, and it locks up a little bit better than DVB-T. Does it matter? Probably not too much, but it's in the specifications. Multipath is less of an issue at high frequency, and if you have DVB-T issue and you want to use DVB-S and go to a higher frequency on 1200, that you may be a little bit better due to higher gain and more directive antennas that are available. Remember that as you have a more directive antenna, the beam width is narrower, and you get a natural rejection from signal off to the side, so that multipath becomes less of an issue with high gain antennas. DVB-S and DVB-T comparisons, not all, but I have seen some comparisons. They're comparing the signal quality of DVB-S and DVB-T, but they have DVB-S at 1200 megahertz and DVB-T at 450 megahertz. If you're going to do a comparison, they should have them at the same frequency, but I've seen them compare them at different frequencies. Because DVB-S is used more frequently on 1200, they use the signal report on 1200 and compare it to a signal on 70 centimeters. Not fair, but beware, it has happened. There's about 9 dB more path loss from 430 to 1280, so you're going to get that much more path loss if you're transmitting on 1200 than you at 400. So, but the added gain at 1280 sometimes makes up the difference for a given size. So that's to be considered also. Okay, continuing. more cable loss at 1280 and 430. There's a couple, 2.5, 2.7 dB more loss at 450. The LMR 400 has 2.7 dB at 450 and 4.65 dB at 1250 per 100 feet. So there's about 2 dB more loss in the line. But the DVBS that can be driven a little closer to compression can make up that difference. So the difference is not significant. They're relatively similar. DVB-T receivers for 430 are also available from High-Des. The model HV110, it's the simple digital receiver, is a complete 423 receiver, and is available for about $120. However, DVB-S receivers for 430 megahertz are not readily available. I can change that, I'll explain that shortly. Summary, most people in the USA use DVB-T for 430 and DVB-S for 1280. There are some exceptions, but in general, that's the way it is. Receiver availability becomes the main issue for DVB-S over DVB-T. Beware, model DVB-T operates on 430 and uses 1, 2, or 4 megahertz bandwidths. Some commercial receivers that you may get for DVB-T will only do 6 and 8 megahertz bandwidths. If you find out that you get a commercial receiver that has a 6 or 8 megahertz bandwidth built into it, it will not work for the ham use with 1, 2, or 4 megahertz bandwidths. And for the most part, we all use 1, 2, or 4 megahertz bandwidths unless somebody wants to experiment with some high definition stuff. Just beware, it can be an issue. So, do you use DVB-S or DVB-T? All this sort of stuff combined. Well, it depends. Use DVB-S on 23 centimeters, mainly because of an inexpensive set-top box with free-to-air commercial receivers. Use DVB-T on 70 centimeters for DX narrowband operation using High-Des receivers, or check your local repeater functions what they use. Both DVB-S and DVB-T can be used for repeater operation. So the bottom line of this whole thing is you're pretty much stuck, if you want to operate with a repeater, you're pretty much stuck with whatever they've set up for the repeater. So, but when you're setting up for a repeater, a lot of this information is somewhat critical to knowing it in the first place. Okay, I'm not going to get into any details, but there is a error. There's a plot for an error. There's a constellation arrangement, and that it's an MER modulation error ratio. It's a number that is applied commercially to measure the error that you could get when you transmit a signal. In other words, and the modulation error ratio is just a standard number. A number greater than 30 is good, and it measures the quality of a transmitted signal. Not going to go any further than that. EVM, error vector magnitude, is another high-tech number that is listed in percentage. And they use this when they're measuring the signal as it is received from the receiver. A good EVM is less than 5%. If you have 5% of error signals, pretty much the receivers can handle it. So just remember, MER is a straight number, greater than 30 is good. EVM is a percentage, less than 5% is good. So when you're striving to something, those two numbers are the main numbers that we use in calculating that sort of stuff. Okay, here's a real great eye chart. This is a chart that was done by a spectrum analyzer that shows the quadrants. Now they've got the physical quadrant, all the stuff on the outside here. Hello. Hello, there it is. Don't pay any attention to this. This is stuff that was calculated by the processor, and same thing with this. The only thing I wanted to zero in on is there is in QPSK, it's quads modulation, 4-quadrant modulation, and it isn't in that process. It generates these 4 little landing dots. So that's the spot in the quadrant that you have the data there. And in this case, it's the original signal, and it's a real nice small red dot. If everybody can see, there's some people in the back can't see the red dot there. But that's all I wanted to point out is there's a real tight, real red dot on the transmitted signal. Now this is passed through an amplifier, and that in this particular case, 1.6 milliwatt signal is amplified up to 2.5 watts. And you saw the spectral regrowth before, but now in the landing dots, as it says, each landing dot, each time it grabs a sample, the landing dot is in a slightly different position. That's what generates the error. And as it goes through the signal chain, the dot gets a little bit larger. Okay, now what we've got is the landing dots. As it, where did I put it? As it comes out of a 2.5 watt amplifier,
That's your 18 watt.
it's a little bit, that's the 18 watt. It's about that. But the dots are now spread out. It still is a good signal, but you see when they look at it, the high-tech equipment that they use to calculate the constellations, that's what they start measuring is the quality of the signal and where the landing dots are. This is going back through into the data signal flow, the data flow. All I want to do is just show a quick block diagram that shows the beginning is the flow of the whole thing. You've got composite video. Get your fingers off of the LED art. Okay, you got composite video and analog. It goes into an MPEG encoder. You may have a multiplex, maybe out, but it goes out of the encoder, goes into what I call that Reed-Solomon encoder before. It goes into then it goes into a randomizer, and then into a trellis encoder, which is a mapper. And there's 3 encoders that's part of the forward error correction circuitry. And then you have an output data flow from that's composed of a transport stream. So that's really the basic format, the basic functions of a digital signal there. Now the modulation flow from that data signal, it comes into a frame adaptation, and it's an IQ signal. It's a signal that's composed of an incident and a quadrature signal, which is 90 degrees out of phase. It goes through a digital analog converter for the incident channel and a digital analog converter on the quadrature channel. It goes through a low-pass filter to remove some of the extraneous stuff. Filters remove the digital oversampling. You always get oversampling and digital conversion. And then it goes into a modulator and RF amplifier. Looks like simple, doesn't it? It is in some respects, but there's a lot more to it.
Keys, you don't have to build those things, it's in the black box.
Yeah, it's all in the black box. If you don't build it, it just goes in here, goes out there, and let it go at that. That's the signal flow that I have on a specific transmit board that I designed. And I just show it there to show you what we have of a transmitter that uses a computer to do all of the encoding and the error correction and that handles it. So that the analog comes in there, it goes into an MPEG-2 encoder, and this is a PC. This is your personal computer, whatever format. This one uses Ubuntu, and then it goes into the DATV Express Exciter board. It's an FPGA-based device. This is about I'll show you a picture of it in a minute, but a 3/6" board. Goes to first stage power amplifier, second stage amplifier, comes out with 6 to 10 watts. But that's the whole thing there. That's what the transmit board physically looks like. I had these for sale. That it's a nonprofit thing. We formed a nonprofit company that we sell the boards just to recover the cost of building it, and that we started out selling them for about $300 a piece, and that end up reducing it down to about $175 a piece until two competitors came along, Align Microsystems with their Line board, and that Analog Devices with their Pluto board, and sold them for the same price. We said, okay, that's fine, let's not sell them anymore, so we obsoleted it. It was actually a mistake. We should have kept on building them, but we didn't. But anyway, it gives you an idea of what I came up with to build the board and at least provide something for the hams that nobody had before that. That's now what I've got. I should have brought that unit with me. Run forward to today, I've designed another standalone receiver. I call it the Versatune. It's a standalone receiver. It's in a small 3/6" box that takes DVB-S or DVB-T, whichever one you want to work with, and displays it on a monitor. It's a scanning type of receiver. It's got a lot of features. One of the main features it's got right now is the software doesn't work right. Software is the toughest thing, and I've got the hardware is physically designed. That's what it looks like. It's the interface board there. The main engine is a Raspberry Pi Model 4B. That's doing all the horsepower. But basically, we just have it's a tuner, a purchased tuner inside, and we've got room for 2 tuners in there, and that the interface board and Raspberry Pi, and we hope to be able to sell it. And again, it's a nonprofit type of thing. I'm not going to say what the price is because the longer time it takes to design it and build it, the price keeps going up, so I don't know. At this particular time, I do have that is a working model that I'm expecting to possibly be offered for sale the 3rd quarter of this year, maybe the 1st of next year. But it's an upcoming receiver that we've designed that is a standalone device, so we don't have to have a computer or a receiver along with it. Okay, that's all I wanted to say on that particular thing. That's some of the features of that receiver. It does do scanning. It scans up to 7 channels, and that you can put a lot of identification into it. If it doesn't receive a signal, then it'll switch to a slideshow of your choice. It'll go through the slideshow until it sees the signal. When it sees the signal, it'll switch onto the signal. So that's about all that I want to say for that. Okay, I've got more information about ATV. I do have some handouts, which is exactly what you see here. There's a limited number. If anybody wants a handout as long as they last, I got maybe 10 or 15 sheets here. It gives you a lot of the information for DATV and where to find some of this, some stuff. I've listed all the major websites. So it's a good resource so that when you want to study some of the stuff and look into it a little further, that it's available there. Okay. Are there any questions? Yes.
I have a question. When did EchoStar and DirecTV stop transmitting ATSC on the satellites now?
I didn't know they did. Is there some, I'm not familiar with
I don't know that they
EchoStar.
ever used that format.
Well,
ATSC was
DVB was,
terrestrial.
well, long after Charlie Ergen used EchoStar.
As far as I know, everything was always DVBS on the satellite digital.
It was always DVBS.
That's what I've always heard.
Okay. I'm totally unfamiliar with that.
I have another question. So, the new ATSC 3.0 standard is based on DVB-T, I believe.
Well,
The DVB, the ATSC 3.0 is a derivative of DVB-T. It's more complex than DVB-T. It's a variant of DVB-T, but it is not comparable to it.
It's not
You
backwards
can't. It's not compatible. You cannot use one for the other. I was originally, when they came out with that, I had hoped that it would be that you could use DVB-T interchangeably in some form. No. It didn't work out that way.
Yeah, the difference is DVB-P packaging or the video for DVB-T systems, and ATSC 3.0 uses regular internet packet protocol. So your input to your TV modulators is IP video. So it's a different, that's the biggest difference. And then there's a low-speed data stream for handheld devices that's superimposed over the high-speed modulation for your big TVs. That's pretty much
Also the air correction.
Is there any
Yeah.
commonly used frequencies?
I didn't want to
you
go
can
into
get on
detail.
for people that send.
Everybody's eyes are black silver.
The question is there commonly used frequencies for either 70 or
Right.
70 centimeters? I don't think there's any common frequency that's used. In general, it's the lower half of the band, 421 to 430 is used, but it's pretty much up to everybody or whoever they set the repeaters up for. There's no standard. On 1200, it's basically area dependent. You got to stay away from the commercial stuff because there's some commercial radio telephone stuff that's in that, and you are secondary to that. So I've been a problem with some of the GLONASS stuff that's showed up on ours, and we had to vacate. So it's whatever they decide to use. The Galileo system is going to take 1288 or related frequencies. So whenever it becomes a problem, we're going to have to move there too.
This is my other question. Are you listed in repeater book, the repeaters that are used for?
There are some listings of the repeaters. The AFCO in Columbus was listed as the repeaters for television, but the latest issues that I know of, they deleted them all.
Ah, shoot.
I don't know why.
Thank you.
It used to be 434, at least in California, for analog, but 434 and 426, but that's been years ago, I don't know.
Mike, can you address that?
Yeah.
No, that's BT.
I better, I get it to a microphone since it's recording. Yeah, basically, from the old analog days, you had 439.25. So for repeater inputs in simplex, it's usually 441 center channel for digital. Out in the West Coast, where you had the 434.0 analog is 434 2 megahertz bandwidth for digital. Repeater outputs, the old 421.25 channel is now 423 for digital output. So, and as far as it all depends on which frequency coordinators are reporting the ATV, but most repeaters across the country are reported. Anyway, back to Art.
Okay, yes.
Will you be showing any live examples on the screen?
You mean at the receiver, you mean?
Come to the booth, you'll see it.
Oh, in the booth, I do have a live, the receiver is operating.
It's tied to the date.
1003, 1004. Though I do have one, it quasi works. I can explain the problems, but yes, it is an operational unit.
That's moved from 1003-4.
1003, 1004.
You'll get to see the live ATV, and there's also connection to the Dayton repeater.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got also an analog, no, it's, the Dayton repeater is on digital now.
Yes.
Yes,
Digital and analog.
That's
digital
first
and
building.
analog,
It's building one.
yeah. It's all in building one. Any other questions?
That'd be cool.
Way in the back.
What's the price of that raspberry?
I can't hear you, I'm gonna have to come back here.
The price of the Raspberry Pi. The price of the Raspberry Pi you showed. The price.
The Raspberry Pi keeps going up, and the Raspberry Pi keeps going up in price. When I started the device, I was buying the Raspberry Pi for $35. It is up to about $60 now. If you go to the store, Raspberry Pi is $60. Well, it will be included with the receiver when I release the receiver. Okay. Anybody else? Well, that's, I've probably taken up more time than I want to. Turn it over to Mike here. We got a little bit of time left. He wants to talk about the ATN network and also where he's moving to very shortly. You'll be glad to hear about this. Stick around, listen to what he has to say about that.
Yeah, go ahead and start it up there. You're familiar.
No, I'm not familiar with how they've
Well,
got
I
it
meant,
set up.
no, I meant your computer, so go ahead.
No, it isn't. No, it's not my computer.
Oh, it's
That's-
on your dongle though.
It's on the dongle, but I don't know how to get to it.
Hit the escape key, I think, to get out of your program.
That's why I wanted to use my computer.
See, I bring my stuff and then he puts it on his dongle. I'm like twice removed. Anyway, I'm Mike, WA6SVT, and also VP6MC. And from the second call sign, you'll know we're getting ready to move. Anyway, I'm a retired broadcast engineer from KCBS and KCAL TV in Los Angeles. As Art's getting this ready to go, the part about ATN is going to show some of the repeater sites, the coverage maps, and a little bit about the system. While he's getting this to go, since time's getting to be short, all of our
ATM?
yeah, the ATN, please, thank you. Get it going here. Yeah, all of our repeaters use a digital input on 434 megahertz, 2 megahertz bandwidth. We still are backwards compatible in that we still have the analog 434.0 input, 2441.5 FM input, and then our outputs, with the exception of Oak Mountain, which is 919.25, all the rest of our repeaters in Arizona, Nevada, and California run 1200 megahertz outputs, which would be the standard 5 frequencies you'd see in the ARRL band plan of 1241.25, 1253.25, 1265.25, 1277.25, and 1289.25. Okay, now thank you, Art, for getting that set up. And this is the up and down? Up and down?
No, that's back and forth there.
Okay, got it. Okay, so what is Amateur TV Network? We're a network of ATV repeaters, and we do have chapters all across the country. We have one in Pitcairn Island and also one in Tasmania. This will be a presentation of the linked repeaters in Arizona, Southern California, and Nevada. This is a picture of Mount Wilson. This is when we had the big fire that was burning up. And the location near the middle, you can see a big bright light over there. That's where I was at the KCAL building with the fire hoses out. Here's a location of some of our repeaters. And as I mentioned, the input frequencies on the top, and in this case, this is Santiago Peak. We also have a microwave output at 5910 using FM, so for those of you who do ICOM 905s, you can pick us up on 5910. And then you have the coverage map in the upper right-hand corner, which covers most of the Los Angeles, Orange County, and San Diego areas. Here's a closer view of the coverage map and a view of the shack up on Santiago Peak. Another view, the amplifier in the middle with the meter, that's the 5910 25 watt amp. We got a 400 watt PA on 1253.25, which we will be going to digital soon. This is just a side view, and those cans over there is for a 220 command and control repeater. This is Oak Mountain, which covers more to the west, San Fernando Valley, Santa Clarita Valley, and parts of Ventura County, and this is the one that has the 919 output. It also has a microwave output at 3380. There's the coverage map for Oak. 8-foot link dish back to Santiago Peak. A view from the tower, there's the blue stick is the 919 transmit antenna. And then a view to the right is looking back up at the tower. And another view of the tower. And then there's me standing up next to the equipment rack at Oak. Another close-up view. Snow Peak, this is a site that's just slightly less than 8,000 feet. Same input system that everybody else is using. And this one we are using 4 megahertz bandwidth because we're having to protect ANSR4 radar at San Clemente Island well over 100 miles from the repeater. But their radar is up at around 1247, 3 megs bandwidth. When we ran the 6 megs, the top 600 kilohertz, our signal landed on them, so we're reduced to 4 megahertz. We don't bother them, everybody's happy. There's a picture of the antenna farm. The blue stick is the 434, and then to the left of that's the white stick for 1242. Then we got a tower camera and then a 24 or 2.4 gigahertz receive antenna. And then it had fires a few years ago that was up at Snow Peak, and our camera up there was providing this to the fire department. And those aren't house lights, that's individual fires all over the hills. Here's the coverage for Snow Peak. It also covers down into the Palm Springs. And we have an interesting propagation because the Salton Sea is 200 feet below sea level. And in the middle of the path gives us an extended range of about 30-40 miles further than you would have under northern curvatures. Here's the Mount Wilson frequencies and same basic setup. And the coverage map for Mount Wilson, that's also where most of the TV stations are at. There's the coverage map for that site. Job's Peak, this is where the pictures, I don't have all those towers at my house, but the one to the right is the view looking north into the desert from the mountains from my tower. Close-up view, and that's my coverage map from my place. Another view of the map. Then we have a repeater in Santa Barbara. It's on the side of the hill. That's why the coverage is just down towards the ocean. And it's a 10-foot link dish with a 124-mile path back to Santiago Peak, skirting a Calabasas Peak is 4 feet blocking the path, but we run enough power to blast right through it. Let's see. There's a picture inside with the racks. There's a view looking down over Santa Barbara. This is a link site at Ord Mountain. This is when we were constructing a 45-foot tower. That provides a microwave link to Mount Potosi for Las Vegas. That ties to my house and my house back to Santiago. And there I am up putting a 8-foot dish in for 5 gigahertz back to my house, and then the grid dish to the right is 1265 receive from Potosi and transmit 2417 to Potosi. There's the picture of the site looking up at the tower. This is Arizona. This is kind of a zoomed in shot from White Tank, and that's Camelback Mountain. And you've probably heard of that if you've ever gone to Phoenix. There's his frequencies, the same receiver lineup, which makes it nice for the repeater users. They just use their equipment, they can go to any site and their gear works. There's their coverage map for Phoenix. This is Mount Lemon. We're getting into a different site building up there, but there's the coverage for the Tucson, Arizona area. There's their coverage map, covers about half of the state. There's the tower, some of the gear. That's a link dish that we had up, we were getting ready to put up. And this is kind of a link map, the green line showing Santiago Peak to my house, to Ord, to Potosi. And that's the end of that show. So, Art, if you want to get the other thing about the island, I'll
What's your
ask
email
questions.
address?
Say again?
Email address.
Whiskey Alpha 6 Sierra Victor Tango @gmail.com or WA6SVT @gmail. I do have some handouts that has some information too, if you come see me.
Mike,
Yes.
do you happen to have that on a website we can log into?
Yeah, there's www.atn-tv.com should have that. If you look under membership, and the membership application, you look down for Southern California, all my contact information's there. And then this is a real short little thing. Last summer, or I should back up, a couple winters ago, we had 8 feet of snow at Mount Wilson. I got trapped up there for 16 days, so then I went into time and a half after my shift. 24/7, ka-ching, ka-ching. So paid off a couple credit cards, paid down my wife's car. Where are we gonna go on vacation? We haven't been any place special since 2010, so we decided to go to Tahiti. Talked to my friend Morella, VP6MW, she says, come visit us out there. So I said, hey, you want to go to a really wild place and do something even more exciting than just Tahiti by itself? And she goes, sure. So we went there. So this is Pitcairn Island. And I found out they didn't have a TV station, but they were getting ready to set one up, but ran out. They had the 4.5 meter satellite dish. They got it in, installed it themselves, but didn't know how to hook the gear up, had no transmitter. And I said, well, I'm a broadcast engineer, I'll come out and give you a hand. And I donated my time. And I modified an ATV amplifier to work a little higher in the band with a different power module. And that's the same stuff we use for digital ham TV, so channel 25, station ZB TV was born on Pitcairn Island. Close up, and this is a panel antenna I rebuilt. And there's a VSWR 1.03 to 1. Pictured here with Jay Warren, and here's a panel antenna at Ship's Landing Point. There's a Spectrum picture, an area 8 megahertz bandwidth for using the New Zealand standard. Since they bought their TVs in New Zealand, we just adopted that standard. A little closer view. And this is the USGS, which is an American government radio that's in a vault up at Pitcairn Island. And the top 2 feet of the rack are available, so we put the TV station there. A little closer view. Output power is about 8.5 watts. I backed it off. The amplifier is capable of 10, but I'm not there to keep it going, so run it conservative. This is the thank you letter from the mayor of Pitcairn Island for the TV service, and we got permission to use ABC Australia's Pacific Island feed. So they're pretty happy about that, and it unclogs. They're not having to download as much Netflix videos, so now they can send their emails. And since then, now they got the Starlink system.
You have 5 minutes, Mike.
Yep, that's it. Any questions? Yes.
Tower spaces like gold. You find all those tower spaces in the rack spaces.
It's who you know. Some of those tower spaces are my towers. The one at my house, the one at Ord Mountain, Mount Wilson is where I worked. My employer was gracious enough to allow us on the tower. Santiago Peak, we've been there since '83, back when it was a mom and pop owner. We did a lot of work for them, tower work and stuff like that. Now that it's one of the major tower corporations owns, they do a lot of them. We've been grandfathered in. Again, we do work there. I mean, we keep the building painted, replaced drywall when they got a roof leak, and says, hey, don't spend thousands of dollars, we'll take care of it. Can we pay you? No. So stuff like that. So when you get a reputation, sometimes magic things happen. Any other questions? Yes?
ET Electronics, is that still?
No, Tom O'Hara retired several years ago. His website should still be up in case there's people with questions on the older equipment. Any other questions? Yes, Bill?
What happens if you sell your house on the Org Mountain Line?
Well, interesting
how do
thing,
you
the
really-
real estate agent has told me that having, because I lease space, I'm a commercial site leaser.
Yeah.
They said the house is worth about $60,000 more at that radio site there because it brings in hundreds of dollars a month and make the house more attractive. So I will work out a deal as long as the buyer wants that, and I can't think of any buyer who would not want $700 or $800 a month coming in on radio site rental to say, get that stuff out of here. Part of the deal is I'll be available for consulting, but I want to keep ATV stuff there. Anyway,
And how are you gonna link Pitcairn Island into the ATN network?
IP video stream.
There you go.
Any last questions, because I know we're out of time. All right, feel free to come to the ATV booth, and also, thank you. For those of you who've gone to Pitcairn, or would love to go to Pitcairn Island but thought you had to pay $18,000 or $20,000 for your de-expedition, they do have homestays there. They are ham-friendly. I do have some handouts if you're interested, so the average Joe can go and operate and get a VP6 call and have your own pile-up, which I enjoyed last summer, so see me afterwards. You both have handouts? Yes.
Yes, I got some handouts right here for as long as they last. Thank you one and all for coming. I appreciate my stumbling a little bit. You guys caught me off guard here, and that I'll do the best I can.